Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members, probably not any guests, but members of the West Shore Photography Club. We're here tonight on Wednesday, November the 9th, 2022, to talk about preparing for the club's upcoming print exhibit at the Carlisle Arts Learning Center. I'm happy to have Joe Farrell and Mike Donovan with us tonight to help with this preparation. I'm going to start out by talking about some of the specific requirements, the time deadlines, that kind of stuff, and the print requirements. And then Mike and Joe are going to give you some very down-to-earth suggestions for getting your digital files from your camera onto a surface that you can hang in print form. Doesn't have to be on paper necessarily. Actually, it could be on glass, or acrylic. We'll get into that. Anyway, the first thing I'd start out by talking a little bit about the why we have a print exhibit. Why do we go to this trouble? Okay, Joe, do you want to start out and maybe verbalize a little bit about your feelings about a print exhibit? What's to be gained from one of our members who may not be sure about whether they want to go to the effort of participating? Why would they want to do that?
Well, I can think of one reason, and that I can think of three, as a matter of fact. First one would be you get to see some printed work. Many of our members, and me including, up until a few years ago, had all my images in my digital files, and no one ever saw them. So now I print them off, and people can actually see it, and I can show it to them. That's the minor reason why. This will help. This process will help you get geared up that way. The real thing, I think, is that for members, when you have images in a professional art gallery like CALC is, it really enhances your well-being in terms of, I am now accomplished. I have work that is good enough to be in a gallery, and that makes you feel really good. And that actually helps you, that encouragement then helps you to move forward. I think that's very, very true. And then the third reason is that, your friends and your family and your neighbors and your church and whoever else that you invite to the gallery opening on December the 9th, I think it is, at 7 o'clock for wine and cheese. And your family members will say, wow, you've made it. You're accomplished. You got it. And that was so evident in our last gallery opening that we had with the Historical Society and the West Shore Photography Club, is that we saw the kids and the families and showing the relatives and the grandparents the work that they did. And you could see our members beaming because they were so proud of that. And then the spouses or partners were also reacting to it. I think it's a wonderful experience. And I think that's the thing you'll get the most out of it. That's from my perspective.
Okay, yeah, I thought of two reasons, fame and fortune.
Okay.
Well, Mike, what do you think?
One of the things is that it's a step of courage. It's another step in the and I hate to use this word, in the journey of photography, but it really is. And if you reach the point that you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna go for it, I'm gonna put something up, you're kind of like breaking through something. And it takes a lot of nerve to hang your stuff up. It really does, where other people can see it. So if you can break through that courage barrier, it's a big step in your photographic life. It really is. And there's many people that still think a photograph does not exist until it's in print. So how your work looks in a frame printed is very, very different than how it looks scrolling through your phone and showing somebody. It looks way better hanging on the wall. So
Thanks,
I'd say it's a personal breakthrough thing almost.
I read an article by Brooks Jensen a number of years ago. He's the editor of Lenswork magazine, and he was talking about the value, the personal growth value for you as a photographer from printing. And here's his idea. In order to select a print, an image that you want to have printed, you think, oh, I want something that's kind of special. It's one of my best work. Boom, right there, things kick in, the process kicks in, that mental process where you're now evaluating your own work. You're looking at it with a discerning eye and asking yourself, which one's better, this one or that one, or this one or that one? And that process is a growth process for you because it brings together everything that we've talked about in club meetings over the years about what makes a good photograph. And now you're put on the line and you have to make that decision for your own photographs. And then the whole process of going through that, the process of having a print made, if you haven't done that in the past, that's a unique experience in itself. And as Mike said, a lot of people think once it's on the wall, it's not really a photograph until it's on the wall. The other thing that comes to mind is that Carlisle Arts Learning Center, okay? Your print is going to hang on a wall with other photographs in the Carlisle Arts Learning Center. This isn't just a coffee house. This is a fine establishment in Carlisle that's well established, has a large membership, and is well respected in the whole central Pennsylvania area. So you can be part of this and enjoy this by, showing, as Joe said, you take your relatives in there on the reception night and say, hey, there's one of my prints hanging on the wall. Now, that is not to intimidate anybody at all, because whatever you put up, whatever you finally decide is your best work, stick with it. That's your image, okay? And don't be comparing yourself to Joe Farrell, Dennis Baker, Mike and Donovan and say, well, is my image better? No. The idea here is that you're picking one of your or several of your best images. All right. Okay, let's move on. Let me go over the dates with you, the important dates, and here are the biggies. December 5, 6, and 7. Those are the 3 dates designated to get your prints to CALC. December 5, 6, and 7. So unlike what we did in the past, when we went to Hershey Gardens, for those of you who exhibited at Hershey Gardens, we had some beautiful exhibits there at the Butterfly House. We collected the prints and took them over. So what we're going to do here is you're responsible for getting your prints to CALC on either December 5, 6, or 7. Now, it's not a problem if you give it to another member and they're responsible for it. That's fine. You can consolidate. That's certainly if you can't make it on one of those dates. But you can check their hours, and they're open during the regular business hours, and get it over there during that time. And as Joe said, the big highlight is Friday night, December the 9th, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Okay, we're having the reception. There's going to be refreshments. You're welcome to invite friends and relatives. We'll publicize it as much as we can. And it'll be a great time to socialize, not only with other club members, but the people who run CALC, like Kathy Stone. She reviewed for us a number of months ago, maybe a year ago now, at an image review, did a great job. Meet the people that run the organization. I teach there, so I know a lot of them already, but it's a really, really professional, well-run organization, and it's a great place to have an exhibit. Okay, let's look at the basic requirements, and there aren't many. Let's start with the theme. We made this theme as general as possible because we know as club directors that if we have a theme during an image review or a competition, then right away, that limits the number of people who are participating. Well, we have a theme for this one, but the theme is as I see it, right? I'm looking to make sure. The way I see it, quote unquote, the way I see it. Now, guess what that means? Anything goes. It doesn't have to be taken in any particular location, as we did with the West Shore Historical Society, any particular time. It's just your image. So it's whatever you see. And if you want to present something that's really abstract, like I did at the one exhibit, I match heads that were on a macro shot, and my wife looked at it and go, why would you exhibit that? And I go, because it's unique. That's the way I saw the image. So whatever you want, there are no restrictions there. Here are the other basic restrictions. There are size requirements, sort of. We had to establish a minimum size and a maximum size. Maximum size is because, well, there's just limited space. If we have a lot of people participating and they're bringing a number, multiple prints, then it takes up a lot of wall space. And we need a minimum size because we don't want somebody bringing in a 3x5 or a 4x6. It just doesn't, it's not impactful. Yeah, we want it a little bit larger than that. So here's the minimum size requirement. The image, the print itself has to be at least a 5x7. Now that's not counting the frame or whatever you put it in, but the print itself, the minimum size you can have for a print is 5x7. And then Joe and Mike are going to talk about, aspect ratio and getting it printed and all that kind of stuff. And we even have a special offer for you that Joe will tell you about. Maximum size. And this is because of limitation on wall space to some degree, in case we have a lot of people, entering. Now here you count the frame. So if you measure your piece, the longest side framed from end to end of the framed piece can't be more than 24 inches. Okay, that's pretty simple. So it gives you a lot of leeway. Now, you can enter images that are printed on different substrates, different materials. Paper is the typical one, of course. You can do canvas, or if you've ever tried printing on acrylic or aluminum, those images can look spectacular. The color is brilliant and crisp, sharp images. They're wonderful. So you can print on any one of those materials, right? But the size requirements still apply. The only difference is if you're on acrylic or canvas or metal, you don't have to have a frame and it's not matted. Okay, they just hang them as they are. Now you have to be able to hang it. There has to be a mechanism on the back. So we're going to talk mostly tonight about it. What most people do, they print on paper, and then if you're printing on paper, your image has to be matted and framed. Matted, it doesn't have to be under glass. Doesn't have to be, okay, but it has to be matted and framed. Okay, and very importantly, everything has to be wired in the back, as I mentioned. No matter what you printed on, has to be wired. And if you're framing your image, your print, please get a good quality frame with a sturdy hanging mechanism. We have had, unfortunately, some situations when we were at Hershey Butterfly Garden where we went to hang a framed piece and it just collapsed. It was some real cheapo, frame and a hanging mechanism. So make sure that's a quality work. You don't have to take it out, and we'll talk. Joe and Mike will talk more about this, but you don't have to take it out and pay to have it matted, mounted, and framed. But make sure it's sturdy. And then each print needs to be tagged on the back, and we'll have I'll send this out to you. Then it's the entry form. Well, I guess that's two separate things. You have the entry form, but you can make a copy of the entry form then, and you can tape it to the back. That would serve the purpose. But each print has to be identified with your name, the title of the print, and the price if it's for sale. Oh, and I forgot another good thing. There's no entry fee. How many prints can I enter? Ooh, that's important. 1, 2, or 3. Okay. We're setting the maximum at 3, but if you just want to do 1, that's fine. So 1, 2, or 3 prints delivered to Carlisle Arts Learning Center on Pomfret Street, December the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th. And of course, any images that are entered need to remain on display throughout the whole time period of the display, even if they're sold. Now they can be sold. Or you can establish a price if it's for sale, and then CALC takes a third. Yeah, that's a third is their commission. All right. Now, let me double check. I forgot to do this today because Kathy Stone and I had talked about extending the exhibit into January. Originally, it was going to be ended to the end of December, but she just said they didn't have anything going on at the beginning of January. So I think, January 14th. Yeah, she has it on the form here for me. So the exhibit would be open from the reception on Friday night, December the 9th, and then through January the 14th. Okay, during CALC's regular hours. Okay, let me ask at this point, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and let me know. And then we'll move on to Mike and Joe.
Question for you.
Terry,
Do you suggest to put a dust cover on the back of your
not necessary. Not necessary, but then maybe, Mike will talk about this later. If you have your image for sale, then you're telling people that this has some value to you. They all have value to us as photographers. There are pictures, but if you're implying that it has some value to someone else, then that raises the stakes a little bit for you in terms of your presentation. So I think you would want to take that to the max. And I'll let Mike, would you want to address that?
Yeah, the dust covers are especially valuable and doable on wooden frames. They're difficult. It's a dust cover is really just like I'd used a sheet of just the brown wrapping paper and cut it to the size and then glue it onto the back of the wooden frame, which keeps the dust out. With the metal frames, it's almost impossible to do. But with the metal frames, you then have clips that hold it really, really tight, and it's difficult for dust to work its way in there. Okay. So, Terry, I'd say if you're using a wooden frame, a dust backing will be just fine.
Is it as important for pictures that you're selling? What if you're not going to sell your print? Does it matter?
No.
Okay.
No, not really, if you're not going to sell it. But the other thing that you could do if you're doing it with a metal frame is cut a sheet of whatever material you're using for your dust cover and lay it in there before you put the clips in.
Oh.
So you could do that as well. Just make it just slightly larger than what your mat board is, and then it'll kind of lift up a little bit on the edges and be a more preventative. So
where do you get your
like
paper,
a dust
Mike?
cover with the metal frames, I'd advise you to do it that way.
Yeah, where do you get your paper, your brown paper?
Online.
Okay, yeah, like Amazon.
Online.
Yeah.
Sometimes a party store has it, something like that.
Okay.
But I very seldom use it anymore, really.
Okay. Yeah, so online, Amazon, or an art supply store.
Or you get it at Home Depot. They have the paper they use for when you're remodeling to protect the floors, and that's a very heavy stock, and that would work well for that too.
And one thing to remember is that probably will not be archival. So you don't want it to touch your front mat, because then, acid will leach over the years.
Okay. Oh, in fact, it works its way out and gets into the air around the print, right?
It actually will work its way into the fibers of the matting. You see sometimes when people take an old picture apart, you can actually see kind of a darkness around where the tape or the paper or whatever was. So yeah, be a little careful if you're going to use that kind of paper, not to touch your front mat.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Mike, this is Mark. Another thing to consider there too is it's not always acid. It's gases like sulfur dioxide. A lot of papers are sulfur processed, especially craft paper, and that'll play havoc.
And that'll leave a stain also, right, Mark?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It costs 3M their photography business.
Ooh.
So,
good point, Mark.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, I very seldom use it anymore.
Okay, any other questions before we move on to Joe and Mike?
Yes, I have a question. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, this is Joan.
Okay.
I have a question with the glass on the front. Do you recommend anything other than glass? I had a picture in a display that, and there was so much glare on it that it was hard to see. But maybe this center has better lighting.
Has
So,
excellent track lighting.
Mhm.
okay, so a frame with glass in the front of it would be fine versus a less reflection-free plastic or acrylic
Yeah,
or.
Joe, you want to take
I-
that? I know
Yeah,
you.
I can handle that one, Joan, because I just went through that with some prints that I did in my gallery here in my house. I have typically, for shows like this that we're going to, I have used just standard glass. The price point, one of the things we have to be careful of is how much it's costing you to print and mount and present an image. And then the more it costs, obviously, the price goes up, and then you then sometimes can price yourself out of the marketplace because of some of the nice things you did. So what I do for the shows that I have been in is I've used just plain glass rather than a non-glare glass, which is what I use in my house. I have non-glare glass, but for the shows I've used just plain glass, because there's really three options you have there. You have plain glass, and if you were going to use a framing kit from someone like Michaels or whoever, they will always have a plain glass, or they may even have an acrylic kind of a glass, or call it glass, or clear covering. So that's one base they have. The second one you can get is the one that's a non-glare. And then the third one would be a UV, where UV, it blocks the UV light coming in. And as you go up the food chain of that plain glass, non-glare, and UV, you get more expensive. So I frankly, just for this, I just use plain glass because of the price point.
Is
Okay.
it necessary to use glass at all?
Well, I think if you're going to have it in a show for a month and people are coming along and there's kids and they touching it, and I wouldn't put it up myself without glass on the front. How about you, Mike? Would you do that?
Glass, definitely.
Yeah.
It actually looks better behind glass.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Now, oil painting is never glassed. Watercolor painting is. So, yeah, I if it's going to be framed, it's going to have glass.
Yeah.
Okay. thanks.
okay, great. And like Dennis said, the track lighting there is very good. So,
Yeah.
I think that makes a huge difference.
Definitely, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
Joe and Mike
thank
are
you.
going to talk more about the specifics of preparing your image. Anybody have any questions on the dates or the requirements that I went over before we move on to them?
Can I ask?
Dennis, I have,
Go ahead, Joe. I mean, Dick, go ahead.
who is going to tag the photos, and do you know what's going to be on the tag? And will there be a booklet made of all the photos like you have done sometimes?
I assume that I will do a catalog like I did for the show at Hershey Gardens. I haven't talked with Kathy Stone about that yet, so that's an issue that I'll finalize, but I'm assuming I'll do a catalog, and then they will tag them with numbers that relate to the numbers in the catalog. So similar to
very
what we
much.
did at Hershey Gardens.
You did a fine job at Hershey. Thank you there, and thank you for this.
Thank you. Hey, the nice thing is, well, at Hershey Gardens, we were all there and we did the actual setup of the images, and Kathy Stone will take care of that for us at CALC. We just drop them off. And by the way, if you're not familiar with CALC and you hadn't heard, their executive director retired, or not retired. She took another position a couple of months ago, and Kathy Stone is the newly hired executive director. So you'll get to meet her at some point in the, well, probably during the reception. Okay, any other questions about dates and size requirements, that sort of stuff?
Can I ask, can you hear me?
Sue, yes, I can.
You mentioned maybe putting together a booklet. So do you need a bio from everyone?
No, it's very simple. The catalog that we've used in the past, I ask everybody to send me a thumbnail image of a small digital copy of their print. And then in the catalog, I simply have some basic information, name, phone number if you want to list it for contact information, email if you want to list it, and the price that you're asking for the print if it's for sale. But
Okay.
I'll get that information out to you.
Okay, I'm also new to the area, so I'm not sure what the market is or what the right price range is for this
Okay.
market. Do you have any general
Yeah.
guidance?
Yeah, I'll ask Mike and Mike and Joe here in a sec. Sue, what's your last name?
McGuire.
McGuire. Yeah, you just joined just a couple
I
days
did
ago, right?
just join.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Would you just introduce yourself? I guess we just did, but tell where you're from and tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I moved, actually, grew up in Harrisburg and moved away from the area and lived in New Jersey all of my adult life. I've just recently moved back. I've been doing photography for many years. I shoot Canon and Sony, and I've had my photographs in a few shows in New Jersey with similar clubs. And yeah, I mostly shoot landscapes, but I've done some portraits. And, I'll shoot anything really that just inspires me. So not limited to a certain genre. And I'm just, I'm happy to be in the club.
Oh, very good. Welcome. Mike, are you going to talk about pricing in your presentation?
I can do that. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, anything else before we move on to Joe and Mike?
We're going to start
Excellent.
off with Mike. We're going to start off with Mike this evening. Mike?
Okay, nice.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about your prints, where to get them, how to get them, some choices to make, and so on. When you work with a lab, if you're going to be sending out, or there's a local lab, I guess, Joe, you'll talk about that a little later then, fine art and
Yes, we'll talk
okay.
about that.
usually you have three choices in paper. You have a matte, you have a glossy, and you have might go under the word luster or pearl or semi-gloss. It's nearly the same thing. So that's your first choice to make in paper. The matte paper is generally for a little bit softer kind of thing, like old-fashioned things, maybe old tools or vintage stuff. Like at the Anderson Mill, things from there might look good on a matte paper. As far as glossy paper goes, more industrial stuff, you want to be as sharp and clean as possible. The problem with glossy paper is fingerprints and glare. So I almost 90% of the time use a luster, which has a little bit of like a sheen, but it's not glary or anything. So most labs or printers, local printers, will offer those three: a matte, a glossy, or a luster. And that's a decision for you to make depending on the images you're using. Somebody had asked earlier, I think it was Mark, about dye printing versus pigment printing. And really, the inkjet print that you make, it's a dye print. But if you use good ink and good paper, it should last 100 years. And since probably all of us are already well into our lives, we may not last that 100 years along with it. So it's really not a concern. There's plenty of great art that disappears. There's a guy named Lucas Zamora who did almost all his stuff in Polaroid, and it's gone. It's faded to white. So doing with a dye print, a dye ink is fine. And in fact, the colors of the dye ink are a little bit stronger really than the colors of the pigment ink, because the pigment's actually a pigment. It's a powder actually that's blown onto carried onto the paper by a liquid. So an inkjet print for this will be just fine. And like I said, if you use good ink and good paper, and I try to use the same brand of paper as my printer. I can't always do that, but I like to do that because they're made for each other. And if you're printing at home, after you make your print, let it sit out for 24 hours. For exactly what Mark was talking about, because there's gases in the ink. And they will actually make a little ghostly image on the inside of the glass if you don't do that. If you're getting it from a lab, no worries. You don't have to worry about that. And that's another choice. Are you going to print at home or are you going to use a lab? That's another decision. When I have something that has like tons of black in it, I use a lab. For one thing, it's cheaper. And for another thing, it doesn't have that sheen, like the coppery kind of thing. So if there's tons of black, I send it out. Let's see. The canvas that Dennis was talking about is called a gallery wrap. And that does not need to be framed. That actually hangs like an oil painting. The canvas actually wraps around the stretcher bars. So it's a unit all of its own. Let's see. As far as if you're buying paper, you can get that, Adorama, B&H. You can get it online at Moab or Red River or Hannah Mule, or, they're all good papers. In fact, I have piles of Canon paper, and that's just fine. No one's going to look at your work and say, I wonder if that looks exactly like it did on the screen. No one's going to do that. What they're mainly going to do is look and say, I wonder where they took that. Or have a thick skin, because they might say, he must have a good camera. So don't worry about if you think, oh, my colors are perfect. Oh, this is it. It's going to look fine. It really is. So anyhow, you can get your own paper. You can print at home. The other thing is the lab. If you're going to go online, know that the turnaround time is about a week. Usually it's less, but they tell you a week just to give themselves a cushion. And also, the things that you're going to want to know about your print are, what kind of file are you using? Will they accept JPEG? Will they accept a TIFF? Will they accept a PNG? What kind of file do they want?
Mike, would you pretty much say that, everybody accepts JPEG, and if you have something other
Yes.
than JPEG, then you want to check?
Yes, JPEG
Okay.
is the standard. The resolution, generally they want it 300 dots per inch, so that it'll look good whatever size you choose. Sometimes they'll ask for a color space. Well, don't worry about that, because mostly everything comes at sRGB. Cameras, screens, everything. And that's what most of the printers print to, is sRGB. Some have a maximum file size. So you'll want to look at that. Now, who are these labs? Well, there's one called, I think, Dennis, do you use MPix?
I have in the past, yeah.
Okay, there's one called MPix, MPIX. There's one called Bay Photo that has a good reputation. And I use one called WHCC, White House Color something or other. WHCC. But Joe's going to tell you, you can also get it printed locally as well. And one other thing that I'm going to suggest that you be a little careful of is, a lot of the labs, they will offer you print sizes. And if the paper sizes. And if the paper sizes they're offering don't match the size of your print, you can still overcome that. You can use your software to make what's called a canvas to the size of their paper. Let's say they only offer 8x12. Then in your software, you make a canvas, it's 8x12, it's just a white rectangle, and then place your image to your size specifications in it or on it. Then send it as a total unit. And when you get it back, it'll have the white border out around. That gives you space to fool with as far as holding it, how to fit it in the mat and so on. So that's, if you can use your software to do that, that's a good idea. Some of them will let you crop online and all kinds of things. So the first thing you want to do is make decisions on how and where you want to get your prints done. In your basement, online, or locally. And Joe will have more information about the local things. Let's see. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, Mike, this is Mark. A quick one
Yes.
for you. Let's use that paper size example again. Let's say that one of the options is 13 by 19, your print is 12 by 18. Will they
Yes.
automatically stretch it, or will they just print it the size that you want on that size paper?
If you do what I said to do, make the canvas and then place your image into the canvas, you know what I mean?
Yep, yep.
Then that's how it'll come back. They will not
Okay.
stretch it to fit.
Okay, so eliminate all doubt that way.
Correct. What you'll want to do then is like flatten all the layers and
Mhm.
send it out like that, and you'll get it back like that.
Okay.
Mike, this is Joe. One comment there. One thing you have to be careful of, and I've seen this in some online printing mechanisms, they'll have a checkbox and it'll say enlarge to fit the size of the paper. So you have to
True.
make careful you do not check that box. Otherwise,
True.
something will bleed off in the ends.
Right. Now, if you have plenty of room out around and you don't care about that, their print will be right smack to the edge. And then when you go to mat, you're going to lose a little bit because the mats are a little smaller. The opening is a little smaller than what the print size is. So be a little careful about that too. Isn't this fun and exciting? It seems impossible to make it work, but it isn't. It'll work. It really will. Okay, what else? As far as printing or even matting, whatever.
Like I've got another question for you. When it comes to matting, typically here people say you cut the mat a little bit smaller than the image. Let's say a 1/4 inch on all sides.
Okay.
But I've also seen a couple of photographers, and I guess I do it to some degree, where they do the opposite. They cut the mat slightly larger.
Yes. Actually, I started
Les
doing
Picker
that.
likes to do that.
I started to do that more and more. It depends a lot on actually the print.
Okay.
If the image runs to the edge and it's dark all the way around, and I let a little white border out around, it looks good.
Yeah.
But if
To me,
it's a
sometimes
high
it almost
key
look-
image, I'm
It almost
sorry,
looks like it's been double matted when you do
that's
that.
correct. If it's a high key image, if it's light, like a lot of snow or
Mhm.
then I won't do it because it'll
Ah.
look like the picture disappears into the white boundary.
Oh, good idea. Good thought.
So take a look at what you have first, all the way around the edges, and make sure none of the white disappears, because like I said, there's no white ink. It's just going to let the paper show. Okay, anything else?
Mike,
Yes.
you were talking earlier about the quality of frames. When you do this type of photography, or this type of yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to say it. What would you use, white or black frame on most of your photos?
99% of them will be black. Now, if you're doing a black and white, then silver looks fine also, but almost all of it will be black. Well,
Mike, how about
look behind Dennis there.
How about the color of the mats?
If you're using a black and white picture, I'd go a white mat. If you're using a color picture, I'd go a buff or a beige mat.
What about the people who want to get creative and do red or green or blue mats?
Well, good luck.
What do you mean, good luck?
Well, what happens is the color of the mat you use will yank that color forward in your image. Like if you have a green mat, everything green in your image is going to really jump, and you're going to lose the balance of your image.
Yeah, you don't see many wild colored mats
No.
in framed prints in museums.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Beige for color, white for black and white is generally the standard.
Okay. Just make a quick comment. I think we have mostly experienced people online tonight, but I'm thinking for somebody who's is new to this whole thing about printing and exhibiting, the simplest thing to do is like to get a frame and a mat. You go to Michael's, someplace like Michael's, and you buy a frame and a mat.
Dennis,
You gonna get into that, Joe?
that's exactly where I'm going to be going. Yeah.
Fine.
Okay.
Very good. Okay.
Can I do one other thing, Joe, before I
You
hand it
may,
off?
you may. please.
Somebody had asked about pricing. How do you price? Well, what you'll find is, or what I find is, you'll know if it's too much. And the reason you'll know if it's too much is because you'll be carrying it around for 5 years, like I have some of my prints in the arts and crafts shows. Some prints that I'm sick of because I haven't sold them. But what happens is, they say with retail, double everything. Well, we can't get away with that. We can't get paid for our time. A matted, like a 16 by 20 mat, which I'll have a 10 by 15 picture in, I'd sell for $45 matted. So I would start with $50 and then see what kind of frame money you get put onto the top of that. $125 is fair because you're going to lose 30% of it to the gallery. And in this day and age, that's not bad because there's galleries, big galleries, that you lose 50% to. So I'm going to probably, if I had an idea in mind, but the 24-inch maximum took that idea out of the picture, so I'm gonna have to do something else. If it's the 16 by 20 frame, I'm gonna ask 125. If it's something that you busted your tail on and you're thinking, I put hours and hours into this, don't be afraid to raise it. If it's a smaller image, 100 or just 75 will be fine. So start with $50 and then see what you add on from there, I'd say. But it's tough. It's I don't want to insult my own area, but here in central Pennsylvania, it's not like an art buyer's hotbed or anything. So that's what I would do as far as pricing goes. Start at 50 and then add on whatever you think.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike?
And don't sell yourself short. I mean, a lot of the people that are going to be looking at these are people that cannot do what you do. They don't see what you see. And that's got to be worth something.
Yeah, and you can never anticipate what someone is going to see or feel when they
No,
look at one of your images. You know,
no,
it
for sure.
might strike them as being something special. They see something in it, they relate to it. It's just, you can't predict it.
Yep. So I'm
Okay.
going probably 125 with the big ones.
Okay, Joe.
Okay, I'm going to talk mainly about the framing, and I'm going to take the path that if you're new, you're probably, and if this may be your first time, you probably are going to want to do a do-it-yourself kit. Where I did start when I first framed my images, like the ones you see behind me here and the ones behind Dennis, mine were, and the ones all behind me are pre-packaged that I've gotten at Michael's, okay? So what I would do if I were you and I had a print, I would say, what size do I want the actual image to be? Forgetting about the frame. What size do I want the image to be? And I think if you do anything smaller than 11 by 14, you're going to have one that doesn't really stand out, doesn't have much punch. I think that's what I consider to be, in my mind, the smallest that I would do. So I would find out, do I need I want a 11 by 14? Do I want to have a 16 by 20, 10 by 13? Find out what size print that you want. Then I would take that along with the tape measure, and I would go to Michael's. I would go to Michael's in Camp Hill, and I would go to aisle 33. And aisle 33, they have a whole series of black and white frames like the ones behind me, but with a narrow frame. Like, for instance, if you're looking at Dennis's head, you see on the top there, he has a narrow frames on the top, but on the bottom, on the right or left of him, he has the wider frames. The wider frames have seemed to have gone out of flavor a little bit, and they're more going towards a narrower frame. Well, they have there 5 different sizes of frames that you could put basically any image from 8 by 10 to 18 by 24 inside of a frame, and you would get the frame, the mat, the glass, and the clips to hang it with. And those are in the price range of like $25 to $50. The biggest one, which you can't use for in this particular exhibit, so maybe about $40. So they're very economical in that sense, and it's very easy to put them together. Okay, that's what I would do. And I would take my tape measure, because I would look at the opening. For instance, if it's 11 by 14 opening in the mat, it's really going to be not 11 by it's not going to be 11 by 14. It's probably going to be 10 3/4, like Mike said, and it's going to be 13 3/4, so that it will be always, the mat will be a little bit bigger on the pre-packaged ones, a little bit smaller than what the image is. Okay, and that's good, because I want to tell you, trying to get the image into the mat and get it taped down when is a challenge. And if I had a white border around it or a black border around it, and I had to have it even on all sides,
Yeah.
I would absolutely go bonkers trying to get that perfect. Okay, because
Mike
you
can do that, but he's
upside down.
talented at that.
It is tough. So that's what I would do. I would go there, and I would pick out a frame, and a mat. And I'm assuming on this one here that you're going to do it yourself. The other option, of course, is to take it to a framer. I just recently had about 12 images framed on a professional gallery, and it was about about 11 by 14 size, a little bit bigger, but they were different sizes. And they were like $128 to $130 for each frame. Okay, and whereas if I were doing it at Michael's, it could be like $40. Okay, so that's what I would do. Okay, if I was going to do this, and that's it. That's what I would do. I wouldn't worry about the glass, because if it's in a kit, it's going to be plain glass. I just wouldn't worry about it. And it's not economical in an exhibit like this to put in museum quality glass or UV glass or non-glare glass. That just doesn't make, I don't think, economic sense for this particular situation.
Okay,
The
can I stop
matting-
you there for a second and
Yes.
bring out a point? If they buy a frame with a mat that's 11 by 14 for their 11 by 14 print, talk about how their image, which usually comes from a camera that has a 2:3 aspect ratio,
Mhm.
how is that going to fit? Does that exactly match an 11 by 14 opening?
Well, you have it would, but if you're going to print like this, and if you wanted to be a 11 by 14, you're in your software when you generate the image, like Mike was talking about, you're going to want it to make it 11 by 14 exactly. Okay. and then send that off to your printer, or print it yourself or send it off to your printer. So it'll be 11 by 14, knowing that the mat is going to be 1/8 of an inch smaller all around it, 1/4 inch on the side and a 1/4 inch on the top and the bottom. So it's about 1/8 of an inch. And that'll give you plenty of, that'll cover up a little bit of your image on the sides. And so did I answer the question?
Yeah, and I did the math on this, so let me elaborate just a little bit. But that's what I was getting at. If you're going to use an 11 by 14, a mat with an opening that's 11 by 14,
Mhm.
then send your print out, your image out, your file as an 11 by 14.
Right. Okay.
Now, what that means is if you shoot with a camera that has a 2:3 aspect ratio, and all of them do except like a 4/3 camera or some other like that, but most of them have a 2:3 aspect ratio. 2:3, when you upsize it to fit into your to make a print, doesn't equate to 11 by 14.
Right.
It equates to 11 by 16.5
Right.
if you maintain the proportions, which of course you'd want to do. So that means if you take your print and you make it 11 by 16.5 and you put it in an 11 by 14 frame, what's
Chop
on
off.
both sides is going to be hidden
Right.
by the mat.
Right.
So do that in your cropping. Crop it in your computer as an 11 by 14 so that you know what's going to get cropped out
Right.
of the sides of the image.
Right.
And then when you send it somewhere to have it printed as an 11 by 14, it comes back, you've put it down, put the mat over top. And as Joe said, the mat opening it says 11 by 14, but it's not. It's 10 7/8 by 13 7/8 approximately, which means then it's going to hide just a little bit and none of the white would show in that case. If you want to be more sophisticated, you could do it Mike's way where a little bit of the white shows, but that's a more complicated process. But this is the easiest way to do it. If you're just getting started out with this, send it, crop your image to an 11 by 14. Okay, send it out and the print will be 11 by 14. Boom, that mat will fit and no problem.
Right. And if you find that your image is such that it doesn't fit any of the frame mattings that you see like at Michael's, then you have to decide whether or not you're going to crop it, use a different image, or get it custom framed. Okay, that would be your choice. Custom framing would be a lot more money, of course, to do that. Okay, but like in my case, for my gallery, all of my images were custom framed because I didn't want to change the cropping. I've already done that, and that's the way I wanted the image. So I had them framed to support the size image that I had. So
Yeah. One other comment. I have been to Michael's and I found frames and mats that were made with the digital cameras in mind. The opening of the mat was actually 12 by 18. Now, if you're a mathematician, that equates to a 2:3. That is a 2:3 aspect ratio, which means you don't have to crop your image at all. You can have it printed by a 12 by 18 and it'll be full frame. Everything will show up. You don't have to crop. And if that mat is 12 by 18, it'll match.
Right.
So if they have any of those sizes at Michael's and you don't want to crop your image, that'd be great.
And they don't have any of those in stock at the local store. Okay, you have to order them. Okay, and if you don't, you could also order them online through Amazon and get those digital sizes if you would. Okay, you could do that. But that's why I suggest you go there knowing what you want your frame to be, like your image to be 11 by 14, and see what they have that fits that. If you want it to be like a 16 by 20, as an example, okay? And you can print that 16 by 20, or you can have it printed in a 16 by 20 size, and you would then get a 20 by 24 frame. But just go and see what they have, look at the prices, and you will then print to the opening that you have. Okay.
They have some nice sales at times too on their frames.
Well, they do, and they have 20% off, I think, right now, or maybe it was 10, I forget, but there is a sale going on. I was over there looking to see, do they have stuff? And they do have stuff there, and it's decent quality. Like, it's like the ones you see behind me. Those are the same ones that I'm talking about that they have. And I've had them up there for a number of years. Okay.
What about the hanging mechanism for those frames?
Yeah, the hanging mechanism is a little sketchy, okay? Usually on the back of the kits, they have a piece of, you have your mat, and then your photograph attaches to the back of the mat, and then you have a white piece of paper, or you have a hard cardboard that has attached to that the hooks to run your wire, and also clips to clip it into the frame, okay? And that's the weak link of the whole thing, are those little clips. When I assemble it and I put those little clips in, I always put tape down over those so that it don't move, because in the course of moving them like a CALC, if they get bumped against one another, some of the clips can get loose. If you have them taped down, you have a much better chance of it of surviving. I'll put it that way. And but the wires work well. I've never had one fall down, I don't think, because they pulled away from the cardboard. And the cardboard on that is, I am sure, is not acid free. Okay, so this is what you get, and you don't have an acid free cardboard. Is it going to last 100 years? Probably not. But if you sold it this week, I don't think you'd have to worry about that. Okay, if somebody wanted to do it, they could get it reframed. I know some people have bought my images and have done that, and they said, I love your frame, but I'm going to get it reframed. And I said, that's a very smart thing to do if you want to keep it for a long period of time, and that's what they did. So
now, some of the inexpensive frames have those little sawtooth hangers that you put
Yes.
in the back on the middle.
Don't use those.
Don't use those. Has
No,
to be a
those
wire.
don't work. No, you need to get one where they have a hook on either side, and then you run a wire between them. That's what you want. And so that begs the question now, should it be wood or should it be metal? And frankly, I don't think it makes a difference, okay?
No.
Metal ones, to me, have a little bit more sturdiness to them, in my mind, than what the wooden ones do. But the wooden ones are generally going to be a little bit less expensive. I think you'll find that. And they're lighter. They don't scratch as easily as the wooden ones do. But I don't think it makes any difference. As long as you get black and then a white or a buff frame, you're going to be fine. And don't get the real wide ones like what Dennis has up there. Get the narrower ones, because that's more contemporary and that's what you see.
Geez, now I'm gonna have to change mine.
No. I have a lot of mine in my lower level gallery are the wide ones too, and I don't change them because I'm not about to spend the money on it. That's about what I have.
Except for the super duper offer.
Oh, the super duper offer. The Fine Art Photo is over in Lemoyne, and they've been there for about 25 years or so, 30 years. And Gary Knob is the owner of the Fine Art Photo. They just moved across the street to a new facility, and it's very, very nice inside. They have lots of stuff, tripods, cameras, and all the gadgets you can't live without in photography. They have them in the store.
You mean it's
they
like
have
an
one.
old-fashioned actual camera
It
store?
is like an old-fashioned actual camera store,
Wow,
and
I
they
haven't been
actually
in
know
one of
what
those
they're
for
doing.
years.
They know what a
Mm.
shutter is and know what a lens opening is. It's actually remarkable, And,
Yeah, Gary's been in business for a long
and they're-
time, and he's a
they're-
professional photographer.
and they're very, very nice people. Well, they do printing there, and they do. Think of like the old, when you took your the chemical processing for the prints that you had. Well, they do that. That's how they print their images. So they use a chemical process, unless you get into very large sizes, and then they use an inkjet printer. And that's Chiclet. Okay, that's what they call it, an inkjet printer for higher end stuff. They use that for the very large ones. Well, Gary knew that we were coming to CALC, and so he has offered a deal for us, for those that are participating in the CALC exhibit. He will offer a discount of 20% on any of his prints. And that's going to be coming to you tomorrow morning in the email. The Dennis is going to send out what the discount code is. and you will order them online. And it takes about 2 or 3 days to get them. You will then pick them up. You won't have them shipped to you because he's local here in Lemoyne. You want to do that. And but you have to order them online. You can't order them in the store to get the 20%. You just do it online. And it's a very, very simple process. And they have the same thing like Mike was talking about. The options for having a matte, a luster, or a glossy kind of a print. And I just had some the other day because I wanted to test the process to see how it worked and what the quality was like. And I was very, very happy with it. And he did caution me that if you do have a print and if you don't have a calibrated monitor, they will, in some cases, if they can tell that you don't have a calibrated monitor, believe it or not, because the color may be off just a little bit and it'll probably be darker, they will do a minor amount of adjustment to overcome that. And if you don't want that, you need to put in the special notes, don't touch my image, okay? If you don't want them to do that final touching, because most people don't have a calibrated monitor. The prints are really bright on the screen like it is now in this on the Zoom call. But when you print from that, since it is so bright, you print it off and it becomes darker, okay? And it doesn't become darker, it's because you have not calibrated your monitor. So I just caution you on that. That's a minor thing. You probably, I have a calibrated monitor and I've never had an issue when I have had prints done by an outside source or even on my own printer. So I just wanted to mention that too. So that's
just
20% off.
Quick comment on that.
Yeah.
If you give them permission to make minor adjustments, they're going to do it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they'll guarantee their work. I've worked with other businesses
Yes.
who, if you're not happy with it, you take it back and they'll make it right.
Right.
However,
And
if you check that checkbox that says don't make any corrections because I want it exactly the way I did it, they won't guarantee the work, because you're saying the colors are the way you want them, and if they're not matched up with their machines and you're not happy, that's your problem.
Now that if you go to some higher end printers, you're going to have profiles, which I'm not going to get into today, which you profile your system to theirs and it matches up perfectly and blah, blah, blah. Gary at Fine Art Photo does not do that. Okay. So you're not going to run into that issue. But
I would recommend just giving them permission to make minor adjustments.
and you do that by default. You have to say not to. Okay, they do it by default, and it rarely. It's only if it's so obvious to them. Okay, so that's it. I am done with what I wanted to say. I think. Any questions about it?
Super. Yeah, let's open it up for questions for either Mike or Joe.
I've got a quick question, Mike. When you talked about the matting and to use a beige mat for the for color, where do you buy your matting materials locally?
I don't get it locally, but your best bet locally would be Art Depot in Mechanicsburg.
Okay. Yep.
On Arch Street.
Yep.
There's
I know.
no longer a Dick Blick, so that's really the only true art store that I know. Although you can get sheets of mat board at Michael's. And you can get them cut, but of course you pay for all that.
Right. Well, I cut my own, so that's not a problem.
Okay, well then try the Art Depot and try Michael's, because they do have some mat board sitting out.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, sure. And while your heads are spinning, let's distill this down. What you do is make a print, you find a mat and frame to fit it and put them together.
Or would you recommend going in the other order?
You can do that.
Find a mat and frame and
get
then
your mat
print
and
it to
frame, then decide, make the print match that,
Right.
and put it together. So it sounds like tons of stuff, but you can do it. You can do it. And because there's 2 specks of dust under your glass and you have to pull it all apart again and get them out of there, don't let that get you crazy, because that's how it works.
Okay, guys, questions or comments?
I'd like to make two suggestions for those who are going to try to put this all together by themselves. I've had bad experience with taping the photo on the mat because the photo expands or contracts different than what the mat does. And for me, it has worked best only to tape it at the top.
Right.
You are
and
correct.
leave the photo
Exactly.
hang in
Yep.
behind and expand and contract by itself.
Thanks for
Yep.
bringing it up.
Exactly.
You're exactly right.
Exactly. Yep. And not
And
on,
going-
not on just the corners either, just on the
No,
top.
all the way
Just
across
on
the
the
top.
Yep.
And getting back to the dust situation, as you put your photo frame together, figure on taking it apart about 3 times to get rid of all the dust that's going to be in there.
Have a nice little, very clean paintbrush, a new spanking new paintbrush. Just brush it off and hope for the best.
We've all heard Mike talk about the little white spots on the photos. That's the way your dust is going to show up.
It will.
Yep.
Yep.
And Joe now calls them mic spots.
They're mic spots.
Pixel peeper.
Anything else? Thanks, Dick. Those are 2 good comments.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions for people who've been doing this for a while? From people who've been doing it for a while?
Hey, Dennis, if you want to try with the framing slightly larger than the picture and line up all the corners, a machinist ruler in millimeters really helps.
I'm intimidated.
Once you get the hang of it, it actually goes pretty quickly.
Good.
And for getting them straight, one of the things that I've done is Les Picker talked about using they make weights to put on the prints.
Right.
And I made some out of some old socks and BBs, which is a real cheap way to get them. And you can just, it holds everything in place. It works great.
I
Good
use these bean bags that I learned how to juggle with.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, before we, if there's no more questions, before we sign off, I just wanted to mention that, are there any other questions before we get ready to sign off? Okay, we do have a trip scheduled for Saturday at the Hershey Zoo.
Oh.
And we've been watching the weather, and the weather as of today has Hershey in dry and overcast clouds on the morning, and then in the afternoon sunny. So the storm that's coming up the coast apparently is going to hit us on Friday, and Saturday it looks like it'll be clear, and that's at 10 o'clock, and that's going to be a really fun trip. You might get a good image out of that. You can put it into the show, or you can take one from the Mill Creek Falls or down at Pine Grove Furnace this past week. Those kinds of images really sell well. People like to buy in central Pennsylvania images of things in central Pennsylvania as opposed to something from Iceland or Myanmar or something like that. So just as a thought, that's it for me.
Okay. Mike, any final comments?
I don't think so. If there aren't any more questions, just like I
Super.
said, get your print, put it in, and here we go.
Yeah, we really need participation, 1, 2, or 3 prints. Okay. So really looking forward to having a well-populated gallery over there and have the club well represented. So if you have any questions, and as you go through the process, contact one of us and, we'll help you through it. It really, if you haven't done it before, it's, as Mike said, it can be a little bit intimidating to start out, but it's a process you go through and it's pretty straightforward. And it's great to have those prints up on the wall, both at your home and in a place, a gallery like the Carlisle Arts Learning Center. One last time, any questions, comments? Super, guys. Thanks for participating. Good night.
Okay, good night. We'll see you going. Take care.
Yeah, Mike, Joe, thanks for helping there. That went well.
No, that was good.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and less
Lori, are you
than,
going to put a print in? Lori, are you going to have a print in? Okay.
Oh,
All
very
right.
good.
That's
So
great.
there'll be at least one anyway.
Or I was gonna say, or 2 or 3.
Thanks,
Good.
everyone. Bye.
That'll be
Hey.
fine. Okay, good night, guys.
Take care. We'll see you. Bye now.